going down Gloucester Street to get to Cranmer.
Well, the aim is what happens is, well,
So the restart more.
that's right. They won't allow us.
Ah!
Well, it's good.
I thought about something. Democracy back. We need it. We need our democracy. Yeah.
That was at the upper end. Yep. So, yeah, no, that's no problem. On the truck, yes. Yeah, we've got a couple of speakers. I think we've got 3 speakers.
They didn't say who it was for.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Kia ora tātou, te lofa lava. Christchurch, it's good to see you all. It is good to see you all in your diversity, in your colour, in the various backgrounds and the people in the age groups who are gathered here today. And it's in our diversity that we find our unity. It's in our democracy that we find our unity. This is a great day in which to celebrate democracy and to defend it. And we welcome you all. At this point, I wish to thank very much the organising group. And some of them may well keep a low profile, but they've done a lot of work in the background. I'm simply here speaking, but I wish to thank Wayne Hawker and the team. They're all down there. I wish to acknowledge my elected member colleagues, local and central government. They work very hard for you behind the scenes. It's pretty tough going. And, you know, we do function pretty well, but there are times when we do have to challenge things. And I know that that's interpreted as dysfunction, but there are some things you don't have to put up with. And that's one of the prime reasons we're gathered here today. Now, just a few notices before we really get underway. For those of you who've brought the flyer for a chance of a prize, please place it in this box up here at the front. There's a box which says Democracy, Our City, Our Say. Please place your name on that. Pens are available. The draw for this will take place at Cranmer Square at the end. There are also badges for sale, such as these. A collection will be made to help cover expenses. Now, the collectors will all have official armbands and plastic containers with an official label. We've got the banner over here. Please sign that. We're going to place that at the provincial buildings. Now, that's a special place which really, for many here in Canterbury, is the seat, the first seat of our democracy. It will be on a table and felt tips will be available. Once we get underway, we're going to go down here, down Worcester Street, turn right into Manchester, then left at Gloucester, stopping at the provincial chambers. A little group will then scoot off to one side and go to Sarah to give a letter to the Prime Minister. The total distance from here to Cranmer is about 1.7 k's, or under 2 kilometres, so it shouldn't be too hard. Now, while we have traffic wardens, please keep yourselves safe, look after one another, follow the road rules as you usually would. By way of symbolism, you'll see the quatrefoil, which represents our Gothic heritage, in the middle of the banners and our badges. You'll see the white camellia representing suffrage as well. Just before I introduce the speakers for this part of the rally, we need to set the ground rules for what we're going to do. So, first up, you're going to have a vote. What a great thing to do. It's a great thing to do, isn't it, at a democracy rally, to have a vote. You might have heard of voting. It's an endangered species, but in some places it still exists. Now, the rules for this rally are, you have 2 options. You can either vote for the Sarah legislation, or you can vote for the New Zealand Bill of Rights. Okay? So those will be the rules that govern this rally. Everyone gets a vote, whatever your age. All in favour that you want to use the SERA legislation to govern this rally, please raise your hand. All right, all in favour of the New Zealand Bill of Rights? I think we're going to have to recount Mike. That's just too close. Mike Holman's going to count.
Okay.
We'll have to include special votes as well. Are you sure that you want the New Zealand Bill of Rights? Yes! Can you handle that much power? Yes! Do you really think you can be trusted?
Jerry said Jerry said you don't have a majority.
Jerry said we don't have a majority. Well, that's a pity, isn't it? Something about uggering around on assets or Facebook. Thank you for being here today and for finding the energy to stand up for democracy. Your being here is valuable and vital. As we know, our democracy is part of our heritage as people here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Being the first in the world where women claimed the vote made us progressive. Since then, we've maintained that momentum, shining the light on the evils of apartheid and nuclear weapons. Now, in taking away voting and democratic freedoms, we're becoming regressive. Surely this has brought a new dimension to the term nanny state. What's happened to our legal rights, our freedoms, and our self-determination? Take a look around you and read the signs, so to speak, and join the dots. Christchurch and New Zealand, and I hope New Zealand's watching and listening too in some way through the various media. Take note, because you will be next. Make no bones about that. If they can do that to us, a major metropolitan, they can do this anywhere in this country. It is well documented now that this hard, heavy, top-down, oppressive approach usually follows a natural disaster when people are in shock, despair, tired and low in energy. And when you look around Christchurch today and you do join the dots, you can quite clearly see that the pyramid of power, which is supposed to be turned back up to give the community the say, has not been turned up. Instead, it's become bolder and heavier. And so we say to the government today, we can see what you're doing. We're on to you. You won't fool us. You can't pull the wool over our eyes. This is our city and we're going to have our say. We are Christchurch. We are Christchurch and we are proud and strong, and with the spirit of Kate Shepherd running in our veins, we will not let you trample us down under the heavy foot of oppression. Remember who gives you your power, and remember who can take it off you. So back off, because we're taking our city back. We move on to our speakers. The first, Wayne Hawker, representing the schools. I'll never forget when the announcement about schools was couched euphemistically as investment. And lo and behold, turns out to be closures and mergers. Wayne Hawker.
Thank you for being here today. This is an important day, not only for Christchurch, but I think for the rest of New Zealand to open their eyes and realise what's happening in Canterbury is coming to a town near them. We're all here today for one thing. That is the right for us as Cantabrians to have our voices heard. I'm here today to speak for the voices of so many that are not being heard within the education sector of our community. The voices are those of the children who seem to be forgotten victims of the recently announced education proposals for Christchurch. As a true born and bred Cantabrian, my parents, like many of yours, were privileged to be able to make choices as to where they could send their children to a local school to get a free and fair education. It was a place where we grew up making friends, including some lifelong friends, where we learnt the basics of reading, writing and arithmetic, maths for those nowadays, where we got grounding for the years ahead and helped to mould us as to be the people we are today. For many, it opened the doors that identified our chosen career paths, and it gave us the opportunity to recognise the rights and wrongs of society as we see it today. Most importantly, it gave us a voice with the ability to speak out when we feel we are being treated unfairly, because it is our democratic right to do so. We need to show our children the way, show them they have rights and they also have a voice that should be heard. They deserve to grow up the same and receive the same free and fair education that was afforded to us as we grew up. They deserve the right to be able to attend their local school, to be with and make new friends, grow and learn together, fulfil themselves with knowledge, knowing that what they do will hold them in good stead as they enter adulthood and contribute to society like we have done, along with raising children of their own and starting the cycle all over again. The recently announced proposals may deny many of our children this opportunity. They won't have a school that they could call their local school. How would you like to be walking 10 kilometres or so to your local school? Friendships may be lost as families are restricted where to send their children to school. Teachers may lose the ability to identify with students struggling due to potential class size increases caused by these proposed mergers. These proposals have serious ramifications on our most vulnerable. And also, we don't forget the students who, through no fault of their own, and that provide serious challenges on our mainstream education system, clearly have a right to be nurtured through their education at schools specifically geared up for them. And for this government to close Mackenzie Residential and Salisbury School in Nelson is a damning indictment that the democratic right of these students and their families is being trampled on. Hekia Parata should be ashamed to allow herself to be addressed as a right honourable member of Parliament. There is no honour in what she has outlined for education in Christchurch. Education is the right of every person who chooses to call New Zealand home. We as New Zealanders need to ensure that everyone's rights is retained and they can choose where they get their free and fair education. In closing, I just want to say how ironic it is that this government has sent many of our brave soldiers over to help in the rebuild of Afghanistan, where they are rebuilding hospitals, they're rebuilding schools so local kids can get an education, while at the same time they are deconstructing local schools such as Burnham, where many of the children of these soldiers on attend the schools. Shame on Mr. Keith, shame on this government. We do have a voice, it will be heard. Thank you, Christchurch.
Thank you, Wayne. One of the root meanings of the word education is educare. It means to be let out. That's not this process, is it? It's a top-down forced one on the communities. I wish to now invite James Dan to come forward. My daughter, my oldest daughter, turned 18 yesterday. Now we drink coffee together. But she can't vote. Well, she can next year, but she can't have all her votes. She can't vote over something which our young people care so passionately about, our environment. James Dan.
Hi. On April the 20th, 2010, I organised a protest on the steps of ECAN. Around 500 people met, and we marched a short distance down to the Copthorne Hotel on Durham Street, where Jenny Shipley was giving a lecture to National Party MPs and supporters called Canterbury Water, the Collaborative Response. We gathered outside, closing down the one-way system and chanting, "We can't drink money, we can't drink shit, you can't steal our votes and get away with it." Well, here we are, just over 2.5 years later, and unfortunately, they did. They have got away with it. They have stolen our votes. Not only did they sack the existing ECAN council, but now they want to deny us the right to vote at the next election in less than a year as well. They say that it's because of the earthquakes, but we know that isn't true. We've been told, at times rather patronisingly, that the people of Canterbury are resilient enough to withstand thousands of quakes, stoic enough to deal with portaloos and broken roads and 2 snowy winters in our damaged homes, patient enough to deal with the obfuscation and bureaucracy of EQC and insurance companies, strong enough to cope with our streets, our communities, our city being shaken to pieces. But yet, we aren't resilient enough to tick a box. We aren't strong enough to think about what we might want for our communities. We aren't to be trusted with a basic human right. I know that's not right. You know that's not right, and you're here today because you know it's not right. Scrapping ECAN wasn't about a dysfunctional council, and it certainly wasn't about earthquakes. It was about the government ensuring that a small group of industrial farmers could get the consents that they needed to exploit Canterbury's water, our water, for their own gain. These interests knew that they would lose at the ballot box, and so they had to have the ballot box eradicated. Prime Minister John Key, the leader who has presided over the government which has taken these unprecedented steps, was recently in Burma, where he met with Aung San Suu Kyi, the leader of the Burmese Movement for Democracy. Key said, and I'm not drunk enough to do an impersonation, "We see her as a person who is a beacon for democracy, freedom and hope for this country." Noble words from a man who is ultimately responsible for removing democracy, freedom and hope from the people of Canterbury. Less than a month ago, as most of the world breathed a huge sigh of relief when President Obama was elected to the White House, he gave a brilliant victory speech, and it was these words that stuck with me the most. "We can never forget that as we speak, people in distant nations are risking their lives for a chance to argue about the issues that matter, the chance to cast their ballots like we did today. We shouldn't have to risk our lives, but we do need to keep up the fight." Thank you.
You can never lose your youth if you keep the fire and you keep the passion alive. Thank you, Jane. The green frame, it sounds good, or is it? But the CBD landowners are facing compulsory acquisition of land. Richard is one who's been framed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just to clarify one point, Jerry Brownlee is definitely not here. I can spot that guy from a mile away. I brought her along today for pity. I brought her along for support. This is Nova. I get a little nervous, so if I ramble or speed up, please just bear with me. My wife always worries about what I'm going to say. I never know what I'm going to say myself, so I'll make my apologies now. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm not anybody special. My family didn't come across on one of the first 4 ships. I certainly don't own half of Christchurch. I'm probably pretty much exactly the same as every one of you people out there. Someone who cares about our city, its future, and the retention of our democratic right as people of this country. 7 years ago to this very, very day, and completely by coincidence, we opened the Bicycle Thief restaurant just over there. We were fortunate enough to create a successful and thriving business. We adapted its use and made it something that we were proud of. My wife worked tirelessly for 5 years, and we maintained and created something very special. I had a meeting with Mr. Warwick Isaac about a week and a half ago, and he gave me 1 hour of his very important time. He assured me that there was no possibility that we would be returning to our Latimer Square site. Our own challenge now will be to start again and to re-establish ourselves somewhere else in the city. Our other challenge will be to extract some element of value from our business, which has been taken so unceremoniously by this government. There's an all too familiar question in the city, what high school did you go to? It comes up everywhere in every social context. Well, in answer to that question, I went to the very same high school as Mr. John Key. He was a couple of years older than me. We studied the same economic studies syllabus, and I happen to remember I got 76%. That's not bad in itself. He may have done a lot better. Somewhere along the line, though, Mr. John Key changed his understanding of economics and created a new model. I don't understand his economic rationale for taking something which is standing and knocking it over. As citizens of Christchurch, we complain about Sarah, the CCDU, and all these other ad hoc. Yes, thank you for that. And all these other layers of bureaucracy which have been created strategically and intelligently by the government to distance themselves from what they're actually doing. But really, the actual problem, and I've chosen this word very carefully, is a national problem. Your voice hasn't been loud enough, and it's been quieted and suppressed. There are layers of bureaucracy that have done that. I can't but help look around and see that none of our city leaders are here. You've got to wonder where the businessmen are today, the people that own lots of the city, the big property people, the people that own big businesses. All we do is make pizza over there. It's a small business, but we care enough about our city and our future to be here right now. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I can't see Bob Parker today. Apparently he's had his nose in a book for the last month, his own book. I can't see Roger Sutton either. Apparently he's polishing his bike and updating his CV as we speak. Mr. Marriott, well, I don't know. Maybe he's out at Pegasus Town playing golf, somewhere between the 9th and the 18th. It's ironic because that Pegasus Town, it's something of a Disneyland design, has been created by the same Dialer City urban planners that have done this to me and to everybody else in the city, this frame, a company by the name of Boffa-Misco. I wish all of you well with your own individual struggles, insurance issues, and I respect the right that you've come out here today and made something of a protest. I look forward to the challenge of creating a great restaurant and getting out there and doing something for the rebuild. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Speaking of insurance, the author of The Christchurch Fiasco, the insurance aftershock, is here. Sarah Miles. Sarah, I know you're over here. You can see that sign, insurance fraud, government complicit. Sarah will be on national radio 8:40 tomorrow morning. Now, we've all had dealings with these insurance companies and still are. I'm convinced the private insurers were pinball wizards in their youth, plying their trade in the back alleys, learning to push you and I around from pin to pin to pin. Read that book. It's a great read, and I'm sure that Sarah will enjoy having a conversation with you. We're about to move on to our politicians now. Now, you need to know, obviously you know this already, but our political systems are an expression of our democracy. We've invited politicians from across the political divide. Most of them have taken up the invitation. One definition that I've heard of politics is to get your own way. Can we have a politics, please, that gets its way for the people, rather than for the politicians themselves? We need democracy between elections, not only at election time. Governments are elected not to dictate just because they have power. This government may have got in by democratic means, but it's used the mandate delivered by that to then go on to be undemocratic. I'm going to invite my colleague in the East, the Honourable Leanne Darzell. Her role as the Shadow Minister for Earthquake Recovery is to critique and to hold the government to account. I think they sometimes forget that, and they like to frame it as being negative. Leanne's role is to hold them to account That's what shadow ministers do. Leanne's been there and still does. I've seen her wading through the mud and the sadness that has been much of the East. But she's a born optimist, and I thank her for her courage and compassion. Leanne Darcel.
Thank you, Glenn, and it's great working with you over in the East. But I'm reading this today on behalf of David Shearer, who's the leader of the Labour Party. He has brought tremendous experience to the role that he has, and I want to share that with you. But on behalf of my colleagues, Clayton Cosgrove, Reno Tirakatani, but also Megan Woods, who's down here from Wigram, and Ruth Dyson, who's here from the Port Hills electorate as well. And this is the message from David Shearer for the people of Christchurch. I'm sorry that I cannot be with you in person today as you rally for democracy. You have asked all political parties to pledge their support and future commitment to restoring democratic procedures in Christchurch as quickly as possible, in particular in relation to Sarah, ECAN, the schools shake-up and the CCDU National Government blueprint for the CBD. I give you that pledge. Labour is committed to restoring democracy to the city, to our schools and to the region. We know, yes, and you will hold us to account because you'll vote us into office in 2014. Labour is committed to restoring democracy in every respect. We know you want more than anything to get your lives back on track, but on your terms, not on anyone else's. Central government has to be at the table. Obviously, there are critical decisions that will still have to be made, but we need to be there as partners with your council and with the community. I know from my own background, and actually I just want to put in a line here of my own, because he's probably too modest to put it in his letter. But he has led major relief and reconstruction efforts for the UN in Liberia, Rwanda, Albania, Belgrade, Afghanistan and Iraq. So that when he says this, he actually knows what he's saying. I know from my own background that when you engage the wider community in a meaningful way, those decisions are more easily understood and accepted, and the decisions themselves are strengthened by local knowledge and commitment. What I am saying is that the recovery should be driven from the community up, not the top down. It's about Canterbury being in charge of its own future. You've asked for the commitments on Sarah and the CCDU, which must develop into a genuine partnership with the council, collaborating with the people, and ECAN, which must be restored to genuine democratic elections as soon as possible, and addressing the education shake-up, which the government is rushing through to avoid making an election issue, which is 2 years away. We make these commitments to you, but we make another one too. We think the government has an agenda to extend its asset sales policy to Christchurch. I say Labour will not force the Christchurch City Council to sell your strategic assets to pay for the rebuild. Orion, the port company, the airport, they're all safe in your hands. After a crisis, people need leaders who are supportive and walk alongside them. I promise to be one of those leaders. As I said at the Labour Party conference, and there it is there, I say to the people of Christchurch, we are committed to helping you rebuild your city from the grassroots up, not the beehive down.
Thank you, Leanne. And from the Green Party, Eugenie Sage.
Kia ora koutou. It's amazing standing here and looking out at everybody. I'd like to talk about local government because it's the most direct representation of democracy. and its primary purpose is to enable democratic decision making by and on behalf of communities, just like central government should. Yet National is throttling local democracy. We've had ECAN elections suspended, we've had draconian powers given to Sarah, and this week the government pushed through legislation which would further reduce local democracy and decision making in our town, city and communities. And that was with strong opposition from the Green Party, from the Labour Party and New Zealand First, and despite a lot of submissions against it too. That legislation strips away council's second purpose, which is to promote their community's social, environmental, economic and cultural well-being. So under National, councils are going to be focused much more narrowly on doing what is cost effective, regardless of issues of quality, sustainability or well-being. And also that legislation significantly increases the power of the Minister to interfere, not just as it did with Environment Canterbury, but in other councils by appointing Crown observers, Crown review teams and Crown managers, so as well as commissioners. We know that Nick Smith wants to reorganise local government in Canterbury. That legislation which has gone through this week removes the mandatory right for a vote on any reorganisation proposal. It means that 10% of electors now have to get up a petition to get a vote. National doesn't trust local democracy, it doesn't respect it, and it doesn't understand it. We need to change the government in 2014 to change that and bring back democracy. But in the meantime, before we do that, Sarah needs to give up its draconian powers. We need the resource management processes back so that we have citizens involved in having a say about heritage buildings and having involvement in the plans, not faceless officials in Sarah making decisions on our central city plan, on our transport plan, and now our big land use plan. There are no hearings. The decision makers aren't called to account. We can't challenge those decisions in the Environment Court. The emergency is over. Those powers need to be wound back. Sarah and its ministers are a dead weight on the heart and spirit of Christchurch. We can take that power back as we are doing today. We need to share our skills, our creativity, our organisational powers and our energy to do that. It's about being active in our communities, in the groups we are involved with. It's about encouraging the City Council to be more responsive, to get its mojo back, as it has done with the decision on the Town Hall. It's beginning to be a counterweight with Sarah. We need to engage with it more and push it to be a much more effective counterweight, so that the government can't sell the strategic assets like the port, the airport company and Orion to pay for an oversized stadium and an oversized convention centre. We have a proud history of suffrage in this city, so let us continue to be active citizens, to work together, to organise and to speak out. We have the power and the imagination to reclaim our schools, our city and our vote.
Thank you, Eugenie. From New Zealand First, Dino Saror.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you very much to the organisers and everybody here for giving New Zealand First the opportunity to come here today to pledge our support for the restoration of local democracy in Christchurch and Canterbury. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming, and I only wish a lot more Christchurch people had turned up as you have today. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Party hates local democracy. The National Party hates local government. It always has and it always will. And the reason for that is they like to have all the power there in the beehive in Wellington. They don't like local people making local decisions that they don't like. In other words, they are not committed to democracy. And of course, we need democracy to have a robust local community. So it's very important that we speak out for the restoration of local democracy in Canterbury. The National Party always, when it comes to power, seeks to find ways to reduce the powers of local government. Every time. And the National Party always seeks to reduce the scope of local government. The National Party always tries to centralise decision-making away from local government to central government. And ladies and gentlemen, it's never been worse than it is now. We have, as you know, as we all well know, a situation where they have broken a fundamental promise to have ECAN fully elected in 2013. That is a gross, broken promise and betrayal which should never have been permitted in this country. And in addition to that, we have Sarah, which is going on and on, exercising powers of the City Council, which it should be exercising today. And on top of all that, right now in Parliament, we have an amendment to the Local Government Act, which again seeks to strip away more and more powers of local government, especially those which seek to develop our local communities. They want us to go back to roads, rates and rubbish. We all know that communities are a lot more than that, but that's not what National wants. That's what we have to demand. And ladies and gentlemen, what they say is they want more efficiency in local government and they want lower rates. Well, all they have to do is to adopt one New Zealand First policy, for example, to take GST off rates. There's a 15% reduction straight away. And ladies and gentlemen, they can do a lot of other things too. They can widen the scope of local government to collect revenue. There should be more flexibility about the way in which the fuel taxes that we all pay are applied. There should be a lot more local democracy in that. Ladies and gentlemen, New Zealand First wants ECAN elected and fully elected in 2013 as promised. And ladies and gentlemen, New Zealand First, and I know all you do too, want to see those powers, those draconian powers under the Sarah Act, rolled back progressively between now and the 2013 elections, so that at least by then there is a genuine partnership, by which I mean a decision-making partnership between central government and the City Council. Fundamentally, ladies and gentlemen, democracy means local people making local decisions for their interests and not the interests of the politicians in government in Wellington. In other words, it simply means freedom, the freedom to make our own decisions. So say it after me. We want freedom. We want freedom. We want freedom. And keep saying it.
Thank you, Dennis. I wish to introduce to you Gareth Beale from the ACT Party. Hang on. Probably quite a few of you know that I'm not a member of the ACT Party, but all I'm going to ask is that you give the man a reasonable hearing. Hang on, okay, yep. He's fronted up, the National Party hasn't, but ACT, their coalition partner, has. So let's just give him a fair go.
We may not agree on everything, but It is my pleasure to stand up here today and speak on behalf of the ACT Party. We decided to come here today because we need to provide a message to those in power.
Aren't you guys dead or something?
That there is a broad spectrum support of Christchurch citizens who feel alienated and angry. Broad spectrum. The ACT Party is a party of individual liberty and of democracy. We stand here today against the relentless disenfranchisement and erosion of our individual liberties. Are you listening to what I'm saying? As a result of the extensive powers given to Sarah, the loss of democracy in ECAN, and the undermining of our property rights through compulsory acquisition. What appalls us most is there is hardly an appeals process. We thought long and hard about whether to come here today. But we came to the conclusion that this government urgently needs a heads up that all is not well. This local ACT committee does not view this as an anti-government rally, but rather as a big fat reminder to government that we prefer small government where the will of the people is respected and property rights are upheld. One of the main pillars of ACT is private property rights, and they are being brutally trampled on with no meeting appeal process. The reason for our attendance is to reinforce the rights of the individual against draconian legislation, which encourages mindless, arrogant and bullying bureaucracy. I love Christchurch and I love its people. We stand here with you today. I'm happy to be here.
Look, thanks Gareth for showing up. I suspect you found yourself in the position of someone who may have cheated on their partner and they've found themselves saying, look, I didn't mean it, I won't do it again, and it didn't mean anything. But I think that's the communication problem we've got. So I think you've heard a fairly clear message today, and you can take it straight back to your partner and let them know what the people think. As far as I'm aware, we do not have any members of Parliament from the Māori or United Future parties. Nikki Wagner has declined to speak from National. Just before we have someone who's going to offer something that is political but non-partisan, if you like, a reminder that we have an Eastern Visions a little wee booth over there if you have any ideas for the East. My personal view is when the East is strong, the city will be strong. So if you have any contributions to make, please go over there. At this point, I'm going to invite Cliff Mason to come forward, and then we're going to give you some instructions for marching on to Cranmer Square. So Cliff Mason. Thanks.
I'm just here as a Christchurch citizen who retains some confidence in the system of government we have in this country. If the national government manages to force the Environment Canterbury Amendment Bill through Parliament, there's only one thing that can stop that from becoming law. So I have here a letter. It's to His Excellency the Governor-General of New Zealand, Lieutenant General Sir Jerry Mataparai. Excellency, we the undersigned citizens of Canterbury, having been deprived by an Act of Parliament of our rights to elect persons of our choosing to be councillors on the Regional Council, and facing a further indefinite suspension of this franchise by the Environment Canterbury Temporary Commissioners and Improved Water Management Amendment Bill, humbly ask that you will restore and protect our democratic rights by withholding your assent to this bill. If If you want to sign, I'll make this available. You can be on the list. Thank you. Thank you, Cliff. I've made a mistake. I didn't read out a letter from the Conservative Party, so I'm going to read this letter from Colin Craig, the leader. Obviously, these are his words. They don't necessarily reflect what I believe in, but this is from the Conservative Party. Good on them, at least, for putting a letter together, and they say, "Greetings, the Conservative Party of New Zealand takes a very strong stance on the issue of democracy and stands with you, the people of Christchurch, here today. Democracy started its prompt demise when politicians in this nation started to ignore citizens-initiated referenda. 92% of New Zealand voters told the government via citizens-initiated referenda to get tough on violent criminals and to get prisoners working." These are their words. Look, I know these are their words. The government not only ignored the people, they actually made it easier for prisoners to get out of jail early. Then we had a citizens-initiated referenda on the number of MPs in Parliament. Over 80% of voters said they wanted less MPs and that the number should be reduced to 99. Again, the government ignored the population. More recently, there was a citizens-initiated referendum on the so-called anti-smacking law that was rushed into legislation. Over 87% of voters, I've just been told it's got nothing to do with it. I'll cut to the chase. The last line says you have the Conservative Party's full support in standing for democracy. So at least another party's been given the opportunity to speak here today, and that's what they've said. Now, we're going to go to Cranmer Square on the way, taking the banner to the provincial chambers. At Cranmer Square, Rosemary Duplessis from the National Council of Women is going to speak, along with Sam Mann, and there could be some theatre there, and I'm sure you're all aware of the explicit instructions he gave to some of the MPs about Wellington and how to travel there, and Mike Coleman also is going to speak. So the instructions are these: we're going to march from here to Cranmer Square, we're going to walk down Worcester Street just there, we're going to turn right into Manchester, then left at Gloucester, stopping at the provincial chambers on the way. Some people are zipping off to Sarah to put a letter there. We will go along to Montreal and go straight ahead to Cranmer. Now, we've got traffic wardens. Please take care of one another, and let's keep it cool. The wonderful George Abraham is going to inspire us with a few chants along the way. See you at Cranmer Square.
Okay, folks, as we start the journey, we're going to have chants along the way. So let's hear some Christchurch's voices nice and loud. This is our city and our state. Our city, our state. Our city, our state. Our city, our state.
everybody. Obviously, a few good different processes that come together. So we've got the youth executive, we've got David,
This is what I've been saying for a long time. We've got so many different organisations. We're all singing the same song. We just weren't all singing on the same page. And I accept bring that together and we if they continue down the path that this government is going, especially in the country, what I get louder.
What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Now. What do we want? When do we want it? Now. When do we want? Democracy. When do we want it? Now. As we take a close look at what's around us, we can say that Sarah has just used their special ground on a number of these buildings.
There'll be some flyers probably.
When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it?
We do things our way. Our city, 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 our way. We're not far to go. We're way there. Right. Are we ready to move? Heads up. Move on.
Have you signed this? It's a referendum to get it. You've got a referendum to
Just close the behind. So who'll be small?
Democracy is a serious business. Part one, it belongs to you. It is a gift. It must be cherished. We hoist this banner here. Our banner is here at one of the oldest buildings of Christchurch, asking for democracy with all your signatures. So those who find
Our city, our What do we want? Democracy! When do we want it? Now! We want democracy! We want democracy! We want democracy! We want democracy! We want democracy!
What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Now!
Hi everyone, we're the suffragists. We want to thank you all for coming down to the rally. It's been wonderful seeing everyone today and all the signs, and you can thank us for the yummy Jerry brownies if you got one. Okay, we're going to play a fun game, alright, to get everyone in the spirit. So hands up if you know how to play Simon Says. Oh, there's a few down the front. Alright, so just to refresh people's memories who haven't played it since, maybe 30 or 40 years ago, I give you an instruction and then you do the action. But if I say, we're not doing Simon Says, we're doing Sarah Says. So if I say Sarah says, rah-de-rah-de-rah, you have to do it. But if Sarah doesn't say it, you don't do it. All right, so these are the actions. So follow along with the actions and then we'll play the game. Our first action is find a landmark. Oh dear. Next one is jump over the pothole. The next one is move to the west. The next one is phone your insurance company. And the last one is hand over your land. And of course, the most important one, vote. Yeah, we're all keen on that one. All right, so here we go. We're playing the game. I'm watching. Sarah says, find a landmark. Very good. Sarah says, jump over the pothole. Brilliant, you guys are so good at this. Sarah says, hand over your land. Sarah says, move to the west. Sarah says, phone your insurance company. Now vote. Oh, Sarah says you can't vote. Sorry guys, you lose. Thank you, we're the suffragists.
Sorry, I was talking. Sorry, just got talking to Sam. I'm going to invite Ian Lockheed. I inadvertently cut him off the list to talk about heritage.
Well, I may have been left off in Latimer Square, but I think it's a very good place to be talking about heritage in Cranmer Square, because much of the heritage of Cranmer Square is gone. The normal school, girls' high school, they're both gone, and if Sarah continues in the way it's been going, just about everything else of Christchurch's heritage will be gone as well. The reason this has happened is because we've had emergency powers in force for much longer than the emergency. The emergency now is one of the loss of democracy, not of earthquake damage. And it's absolutely time for decision making on our remaining heritage buildings to be handed back to the Christchurch City Council. And
And when Minister Brownlee and Sarah says that it's actually the government's, actually the City Council's role to make a decision on a major heritage asset like the Christchurch Town Hall, we now know what happens. The Minister says that he's not necessarily going to accept that. He might override the Council's decision. But in saying that, the Minister has forgotten the plan, the blueprint that he presented to the City Council and told them that they must adopt. And the blueprint plan says that the form of the Performing Arts Centre is dependent on whether the City Council decides to retain and restore the Town Hall. And having voted unanimously to retain the Town Hall, the Minister, forgetting his own plan, says that he may not allow that to happen. And this is the kind of problem that has been faced by heritage decision-making right throughout the last 18 months or so. We're still waiting for the Heritage Recovery Plan, the draft of which we expected to get in October last year. 14 months on, we haven't got the draft, let alone the Heritage Recovery Plan.
That's terrible.
But there are some things that we can have a say on, and one of the things we are given permission to have a say on, perhaps because there's no intention of actually listening to what we have to say, but we are getting an opportunity to have a say on the transport plan. And one of the dangers to heritage in the transport plan is the widening of Manchester Street. It's proposed to widen Manchester Street by 9 metres. Now, if you think of the heritage buildings that still remain along Manchester Street, what will a 9-metre widening of that street do to those heritage buildings? The remaining facade of the Excelsior, gone. The Octagon, the former Trinity Congregational Church, potentially gone. And many other buildings that have managed to survive along Manchester Street. So have your say on the transport plan, have your say on the widening of Manchester Street, and put the priority of heritage ahead of creating a motorway through that part of the city. The blueprint on which we have no right to have any say and no right of appeals is also riding roughshod over heritage buildings. The former City Council offices, the former Millers building, a Category 1 early modernist building. Many people may not particularly admire that building, but it is a really significant piece of our modernist heritage, and we don't even get a chance to have a say about its future. The Wellington Woolen Mills building is also part of the site designated for the transport exchange. It's a building that provides low-cost accommodation. What do we need in Christchurch right at the moment is low-cost accommodation, and that building is also being compulsorily acquired by government and may well not survive. So the blueprint will perhaps have as much a role in demolishing our heritage as everything that's gone before. The Majestic Theatre, somebody's mentioned, is another one. It could go with the widening of Manchester Street. It could go with the blueprint. Either way, it's a building that really shouldn't be getting demolished. We've lost far too many buildings in the city to lose any more. As you've walked through from Latimer Square, you've come past heritage buildings that demonstrate that well-strengthened old buildings can survive very well in the city. The former government buildings will be reopened very soon. There is absolutely no reason why we cannot hold on to the heritage buildings that are still with us, and we need to make our voices heard in order to ensure that that happens.
Thank you very much, Ian. When you look at the word, I've just had a complete brain thing. I think I need another coffee. Brain fade. When you look at the word heritage and you break it down, it suggests to me at least two parts: inheritance. You know, what is the, or inheritance of an age? What is the age that our children are going to inherit of our city? And we just don't know. There won't be much left to inherit. Something that continues, that will always continue. The National Council of Women, tremendous to see the banner. I'm going to invite Rosemary Duplessis.
Thank you very much, Glenn, and thank you, all of you, for coming here today. It's been sometimes cold, sometimes windy, and the rain is threatened. But there's a huge spirit, I think, here this afternoon of resistance to people telling us what is best for us in our city. The thing about democracy is that we don't all have to agree with one another. The coalition that put this protest rally together are people who in many other contexts might disagree with one another. That's good. That's the sort of city we want. We want a city which is disputatious, because that's what this city has always been. We want to dispute, we want to argue, and we've been doing that through the press really successfully over the last 2 years. But we want that disputation to occur among ourselves, and we want the context for that to be what determines what happens in our city. And I want to remember those disputing people of the late 19th century. New Zealand suffragists, led by women, Kate Shepherd, one of the key political figures in our city, who didn't always agree with all other women and didn't always agree with all the political factions in this city, but led a group of women with the support of many men to argue for women's opportunities to exercise a vote in national elections in this country. That was a huge achievement in 1893 when women won that vote. We need to remember it, but we also need to remember, of course, that you have to go on fighting for the democratic rights that are associated with having a vote. The NCW came together as the National Council of Women in Christchurch. It came together to look at how they were going to further the agendas that were associated with women's fight for the vote. At one stage they went into recession because they thought they had the vote. They didn't have to do much more. But then they came together because they realized that the things that they were fighting for when they fought for suffrage were things that they would have to go on fighting for. The welfare of families, the welfare of children, the provision of social services, the response to issues of poverty and inequality in the city and in this country. At this point in time in the history of Christchurch, we have to pick up on those agendas as well, and we do it against a background where we know now we can no longer take for granted the right to exercise a vote in regional elections for ECAN. We have to actually move forward and struggle for what we took for granted. But we're better placed to do that than almost any city in the world, and that's because the people in the city showed remarkable resilience and attention, not just to themselves and their families and their neighbourhoods, but attention and responsibility for large numbers of other people in the city. This city has demonstrated a sense of collectivity and responsibility that goes way beyond what anyone might have expected of us. We've gone beyond what school did you come from in this city. We've gone beyond that. We're the city of the Rangiora Earthquake Express. We're the city of the Student Volunteer Army. We're the city of the Youth Alive program in New Brighton. You know, we're the city of Concern. We are the city where people have come together when they needed to in a crisis. So it is hugely ironic that in that context we are not able to make decisions about water, about air, about land, about our schools, and about the rebuilding of our city. And we will have to fight for it. The National Council of Women has been interviewing over 100 women in the city over the last year, women from different walks of life, women who were focused on their families and their neighborhoods, women who were active in their churches, women who were in some of the major organizations that responded to the earthquakes, women in professional positions within the civil defense, women in heritage, women who were dog handlers going around the city trying to find people after the collapse of buildings. Those stories are going to be available from Monday onwards on a website set up by University of Canterbury called UC Seismic. And if you go on to UC Seismic Quake Studies on Monday, you will be able to read the stories of over 100 women about their earthquake experiences, but also about what they want for the future of the city and the rebuild. And over again, their focus is on collective issues. Their focus is on concern for others, and their focus is on creating a green, low-rise city that works for all its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Just before Sam comes forward, no, he's not. Later, that's going to happen later. Something is going to happen with or to the Wizard of New Zealand Incorporated later. I'm going to invite Sam Mark.
Quite a trick for an old guy. Can you guys hear me out there? Dennis O'Rourke? You bastard, you chameleon. Now, I forgot a few things, and one was that I was supposed to speak here today. Someone just told me, sorry, where's my dramaturge? Where's my director? Out there somewhere. Okay, now I forgot that I was supposed to speak here today. Is this okay? And I forgot my t-shirt on which I had printed the face of Nick Smith. In tears. And at the top of the t-shirt it says, I'm just a boy standing in front of a nation, asking to be loved. Now, Jack had a wonderful idea. He said, let's get an artist up here to create a work of art for a finale. So you guys could all go home thinking you'd actually had something to take away rather than just words, because words, as you know, evaporate. Ask any politician. So Jack's idea was this, that I create a giant Jerry Brownlee, which I did. And he's in the back of my car. He's made from plastic, all taped together, and he has 5 cubic meters of gas. But unfortunately, what Jack wanted was to have him towed along behind us, floating in the sky, like that ever-present mortgage, that weight, that thing that bears down on us, crushes us into the ground. Stop laughing, please. Thank you. Well, of course, we couldn't afford the helium. $1,300. If it had been Kate Wilkinson, it would have been $5. So I said, well, let's create a conceptual work of art. You guys know what that is, don't you? You've had Jenny Harper talking about conceptual art, haven't we, Grant? Yeah. Okay, so imagine, if you will, Jerry inflated in front of us now. 5 of Jerry, okay? Try to hold your stomachs back. Now, imagine him rising stately into the air, Jerry, like a giant cloud, something out of the big friendly giant. He rises into the air. Can you imagine him? Yes. Leaving? Yes. Gently? Getting smaller? But wait for it. He springs a leak. And suddenly that great homunculus, it starts to descend upon us, and we start to panic. He comes down, this giant, and he lands upon us, this assembled crowd of good people. And suddenly, we find there is one ring to bind us all. So, that's the joke. There is no sculpture. Now I can leave now and let you guys go, or I can tell you a poem, or I can tell you a story. Which is it going to be?
Story.
Okay, half and half. There's going to be a story. Look, on the way here, this is the story, but this is true. Everything these people have been saying to you today is true, but this is actual, okay? I'm coming to town, we see one of those little pop-up cafes, which is great. It's like the organic Christchurch, how it should be. Things popping up, Christchurch regrowing the way it should. And I stopped for a coffee, for a cappuccino, because, you know, I'm from the country. We have Nescafe, and it's on a spoon, and it's so deadly. And the guy, he was Greek. He said, what are you doing? I said, we're going on our way to a rally for democracy. He said, we invented that. I said, yeah, but ours is coming apart. Look, on the way back, can I drop it off and you can run it through the overlocker? Because the stitches are coming out. And he said, well, good luck. And he said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to talk about Nick Smith. He said, you know Nick? I said, let me tell you. Last week I was up in the mountains. I was walking along looking for the perfect cow pat up by the Great Divide at the headwaters of the Huranui, the most pristine water in the country. Looking for the perfect cow pat, which is where you'd find it beside the best water in the country. And I did. I found that thing. It was lying there. It looked like, you imagine a still lake in winter. The trout comes up and he kisses the surface of the water and creates a ripple, the most beautiful ripple, a wee dimple in the center. That's what that cow pat was like. You know that last little squeeze the cow gives to create that? It's like Michelangelo put a signature in the middle of the Sistine Chapel roof. Boom. So I got out my 15,000 megapixel camera and took a photograph of the thing for posterity. I looked up and there I saw this chubby little character with hair like tussocks sticking up. The sun was making it glow like a halo. I thought it was the second coming, but it wasn't. It was too sort of out of shape. It was Nick Smith. And he was wandering towards me and I thought, what's he doing up here? What's he doing in the hills? He had a rifle over his shoulder. Round his belt he had a dead rabbit and a possum and Brahman puller. Just a few little things he knocked off along the way, right? And he came up to me and said, I know you, don't I? I said, yes, we have met. He said, you're that artist that sculpted me out of cow shit, aren't you? I said, I'm not in Parliament yet, I cannot tell a lie. I am that sculptor. And then he did a peculiar thing. He took the rifle off his shoulder, aimed the rifle at my crutch. He said, okay, artist, he said, you get down on your knees. Now this is a true story, by the way. I got down on my knees. He had the gun. What could I do? We're in the middle of nowhere. I had no men in black to protect me like John Key. And so then he said, now you artist, pick up that cow shit off the ground. So I did. He had the gun. So what? He said, now artist, I want you to eat that shit. Well, he had the gun. I'd been in the hills for 3 days. I was really hungry, okay? Plus, I'd been to boarding school. I'd had to wrap my teeth around worse things than that. So I did. I took a bite. And it wasn't bad. It was dry. It had texture. It had lightness, like a bagel from the University Cafe in 1974. It was okay. I made my way through that cow pat. In fact, I was enjoying myself so much, I lost track of Nick. I didn't notice him. And when I looked up, I saw him, and he was laughing, and he was wobbling about. Looked like he was going to split himself, and then he staggered backwards. He tripped over a boulder, fell flat on his back, and he dropped his gun. What would you do? I'm faster on my feet than most people, but a politician on his back, so I picked up the gun. I pointed at Nick. I said, hey, Nick, you get on your knees. You pick up a cow shit. You eat the cow shit. I turned to that guy in the cafe. You remember the guy that sold me the coffee? The little Greek guy. I turned to him. I said, you asked me if I know Nick? Man, I had lunch with Nick. I heard that story about 30 years ago. It still works. I'm just going to leave you with a poem. If Brian Turner was here, lovely Brian Turner, which he's not, he would stand up here and give you a poem. It's a very simple one. It's called Sky. Okay, I'll finish with that. If the sky knew half of what we're doing down here, it would be stricken, inconsolable, and there would be nothing but rain. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. The asset sales petition is by the post. If you could please go over there if you haven't signed that. I'm going to invite Mike Coleman. He's just recovering from knee surgery, so he's going to make his way up here. He might have head surgery in a minute.
He's throw that crutch away. It's pretty hard to get up here after that. Sam, where's Sam? Blimey. Who was full of what? I was trying to get it. All I could see was Brownlee in the sky and him being popped and me covered in something. Back in June, I asked Jerry Brownlee about what he was going to do when someone had lost $200,000 worth of equity, and he said the interest rates were really, really low, and everyone will be able to pay anything they needed to. He shut down any right of review on anything from day one. I know you know that. He shut down a right of review on your land, on your RV. He wouldn't implement any insurance advocacy commission at all. I understand there's going to be one at Christmas time. And it's going to be run by who? The insurance companies. He's now implemented a blueprint plan which overrode our own $106,000 submissions on our own city council plan. He's overridden any heritage building that we have seen as important to us. Basically, if you are a person and you ask a question, you are a moaner. If you are someone who has an interest in heritage, he calls our most precious heritage buildings old dungers. If you're an expert from overseas, he calls you a tourist. Jerry Brownlee has no qualifications whatsoever to run our recovery. He doesn't even know the basic UN recovery procedures that say you must consult with communities before you do anything else. It must be a bottom-up recovery process. What he has done is come in and we have got the biggest dictator that we've ever had in New Zealand's history. We have a powermonger at the top and we have an authority that's dictating to us. And to be quite honest, there's only a few that seem to be really realising the stink that is in our city at the moment. Now, we all believe there's an agenda going on here. I know you do. I know I do. I look at the school's proposal. The school proposal was a proposal that was put before us, and then they said they were going to consult. And then Parada comes round and spends 1 hour with every single school. And then she goes back up, and within a week later they talk about spending $1 billion down here. I don't know what consultation is to this government, but it's certainly not about you. It's certainly not about us. It's certainly not about our city, and it's certainly not about what we think is the right way to move in terms of Canterbury and in terms of Christchurch. So you know there's a stink in our city, and there's not many folk who are willing to stand up and cry out about this. I know we've been yelling our city and our decisions and so forth, but the rest of the city is quiet. And that is really, really sad. We've had so many rallies in the city standing up to insurance companies, standing up to Brownlee. We've nailed letters to Sarah's door. And I tell you now, the media, TV3 have been outstanding. John Campbell's been outstanding. TV1 at the Save Our Schools rally stood next to me, looked out across the crowd, and they said there's probably 1,000 at the most. There's something wrong with our media, well, certainly TV1, and I've challenged them. I challenged them from day one, because we only have democracy in New Zealand through our media. It is so, so sad. Now, Labour, Greens, if you get in, we've got to look at implementing something that ensures that we have democracy between 3 years stints. It's getting ridiculous. We should not have to be having rally after rally after rally to cry out to be heard against a government who is completely blind. John Key is not concerned about you. He'll spend 100 million in order to walk a red carpet. You need to know that. We have a recovery minister who is more intent on being a director in a New Zealand casino services company than he is really about being concerned for Kintabs and ensuring that your recovery is going to take place in an empowering kind of way. It is not happening. So I want to say this is really just a continuation of us having to cry out. It does not stop here. We are on a long journey against this government. They have an agenda in mind. Charter schools, privatisation, knocking down buildings, implementing a central plan that is not our wishes. And then they'll sell it off.
And cutting off the dole.
And cutting off the dole. In the end, it is all about people. We are what makes this city. We are what they should be concerned about, and we are the people that we elected in, unfortunately. Probably not many of us. Certainly not me. And in the end, the next rally that we have, every single one of you needs to bring 5 other people. We have to keep crying out, we have to keep marching our streets, and we have to keep crying out for democracy, because there is no democracy in our city as it stands. Thank you very much.
You heard the call, Mike, for Mayor. Just before we have some closing words, the Wizard of New Zealand Incorporated has a proposal to put you. Limited, sorry, I thought I saw ink at the bottom of a page somewhere.
Watch your head. Watch your head.
Thank you, Glenn. Now, a lot of you here at the moment, we lost a few on the way, I think, but it is important that we don't suddenly lose heart and stop. Momentum is like a flywheel. It picks up speed, it starts to go, and we've got another month before the end of the year. Christmas will take up the last 2 weeks probably. We've got 2 more weeks. Now, I'm not going to talk about issues because I'm nowhere near as good a talker or have as much knowledge as Ian Lockheed and Mike Coleman. They've done an excellent job in summarising the situation. We need another event. Something has to happen. Now, what could happen? The balloon idea didn't come off because of enormous cost. But again, if we had enough money, we could have done that. Imagine this giant balloon floating here. They've been on the TV all over the world, YouTube, everywhere. We'd all have known about this rally. We missed it. We must not miss these things again. The next stage is quite simple. First of all, look back to the past. You can't go anywhere into the future unless you look back a long way and then take a running jump. You need to make a really good run into the future. What was so unique about Christchurch? It is one of the most astonishing, odd places in the world, which is why I came here. It was founded by the Archbishop of Canterbury. You don't Archbishop found cities. Who established Christchurch? A bunch of radical Victorian reformers and neo-Gothics, the Ruskin followers, who led into the people like Morris and Co. and all the other arts and crafts people. It was founded by a very bright bunch of landed gentry. Not money-grubbing ratbags like we got today, but landed gentry who have been sidelined and missed out in the last few years in this city. So the foundation was Anglican. The cathedral was a masterpiece that they loved, spent all their time building, and now we've got the most extraordinary event. We have got what is, I think, a witch in charge of the Anglican Church in Christchurch. And I should know. The second thing that's unique about Christchurch is Kate Shepherd. This is the city that the whole world, where a woman stood up and did things to produce votes for women. The first place in the universe, as far as we know, was Christchurch. Again, a unique town. And what else is unique about Christchurch? Do I have to tell you? No other town in the world has an official wizard appointed by the government and who is qualified at university. So I am no ordinary human being. I am something like an icon, a living work of art. To achieve my status, I've had to do away with all recognition that I'm a human being. No social welfare number. I do not fill in tax forms. I am, as it were, a kind of ghostly presence. The spirit of Christchurch, if you like. Gothic, outspoken, and I know what you need to have now is to feel that your hearts, which have been broken by the earthquake and then the government, must now be restored. Now the place to do it is not here. Where is the heart and soul of Christchurch? Cathedral Square! Why isn't it open? The next demonstration I want to be involved in, I will lead the mobs to take back Cathedral Square. Sometime in the next 2 weeks. For this we need to have all our people that we alerted today to come to this rally, to tell them this is not just talk, this is a deed of civil disobedience. But the worst thing we'll ever do is to move someone's cyclone fence that shouldn't be there anyway. So if you'll please make sure you give either Glenn or Mike or anyone else you know organising a rally your email address if you haven't got it already. We can then let you know when it is. It'll be as soon as possible before Christmas, because during Christmas time everything goes very quiet. So don't forget that. Let's all say together, let's take back Cathedral Square. Take back Cathedral Square! Where the next rally should be held.
I just heard it's the Wizard's 80th birthday on Tuesday, so we should probably sing him. Glenn, could you start the happy birthday off? That'd be great. I'm a minister like you, but I can't sing. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Wizard. Happy birthday to you. Thank you to all of you. Not only do I have a responsibility to ensure that my 18-year-old daughter can participate fully in our democracy, in my view, I have a responsibility to ensure that I can look John Livingstone, my paternal grandfather who died at Alamein, defending or fighting for our freedom 70 years ago in the desert, that I can look at him in my mind's eye at every Anzac Day and say, yes, I'm defending that which you won for all of us. We do not have to be a divided city. If we are divided, it's because we don't have democracy at a local and a central level in our government. It's actually our democracy that unites us, whichever way we cast our vote, whichever background we're from. And so I encourage you all to stay strong. Kia kaha, Christchurch.
Just in closing this rally today, can I first of all say a huge thank you to each and every one of you that turned up here today. It showed that democracy is important for Christchurch. Christchurch is our city. Nobody has the right to tell us what we can do in our city. So a huge pat on the back for you all for being here today. We need to keep spreading the message. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to the Maori Wardens who provided the traffic control for us here today. They do an outstanding job. They've been to every event that I've happened to organise and they've done an outstanding job. To the NZEI, we know they've got battles of their own with their teachers and staff, and with the fact, novo pay, where they get paid, why they get paid. Well, they've got a democratic right to get paid. It's simple as that. And we have a missing bag up here. If somebody is missing a bag, we have it here. We also, just before we go, Eugenie, We also, before we go, we've got a lucky draw. As we say, we had some flyers that we handed, about 2,000 of them actually, that we handed out at Christmas in the park for those people going by. We were there annoying you, saying, here, take this bit of paper, but then you've got to come and get a prize if you're lucky. So to make us a democratic draw, we'd like to call on Leanne Dalzell, the MP for the East, to do the draw, put her hand in there. We've got 4 prizes. We've got 4 boxes of chocolates here that, you know, will go down well. So if you can pull out 4 names, and we'll call those. And a huge thank you to Glenn Livingstone for being our MC today. He's done an outstanding job. And to the committee that have put this event together today, the Wizard, myself, Jeff Rathburn, Neil, Lynn, you know, we're just a small team, but we've got our heart in this city. We believe in this city, and we believe that what we have to say in the city is what counts. Thank you very much. And just before we go, we have, is that Ronald? Donald? Is it Donald or Ronald? Arnie, A-N-A-I.
Perhaps all the Ronalds could come up here.
It's got a phone number. We have a Michaela Broomhall. We have Murray. But we've got a cell phone number. So all the Murrays, if your name's Murray and you put a flyer in here, come up and see us. Ah, it's on the front. Jeffrey, is it Hufferdine? So Jeffrey Hufferdine. So those 4 people, they come and see me. We've got a nice box of cocktail. So thank you very much for your time today. Go home, keep spreading the word. Christchurch is our city. We have a right to a democracy, we have a right to a say, and we will not stop fighting until we get that back. Thank you very much. Kia kaha, Christchurch.